Welcome back to the deep dive. We're here again, pulling up a chair and going through the stack of sources you've shared with us, articles, theological essays, all of it. Our goal is to really pull out the essential insights.
So you can walk away well-informed, but hopefully genuinely surprised too.
Today we are diving into a tension that, well, it's created some real division in certain parts of the Christian church.
A pretty deep one.
Yeah, we're exploring the relationship between, on the one hand, this bedrock idea of justification by faith, and on the other, the passionate call for justice in the world. And you've probably noticed this, our sources definitely confirm it. There's this weird separation.
It's a strange divide.
The people who are hyper-focused on deep theology, they can sometimes see social justice as, I don't know, a distraction.
And then the people on the front lines of justice work, they sometimes shy away from what they feel is like overly dense or divisive doctrine.
Right. So our mission in this deep dive is to show you, based on material, that this separation isn't just unfortunate.
It's a fundamental mistake.
Exactly. The sources argue these two ideas don't just belong together, but one actually proves the reality of the other.
It's a closed loop, really. And when you see it, the synthesis is incredibly powerful. The sources are absolutely clear. Social justice isn't the basis for being accepted by God. You're not saved because you do good works.
Okay.
But, and this is the key, justice is the absolutely inevitable sign and the result of a life that's been truly changed by grace.
So to connect those 2 points, we have to start at the beginning.
We do. We have to slow down and really establish what the source material even means by that phrase. Justification by faith alone.
Okay, let's do it. Let's unpack that starting point. So the idea of justification by faith alone, or sola gratia, it's famous from the Reformation, right? You think of Luther, Calvin challenging the church in the 16th century.
Right.
But the source material, it points out that the theologian Thomas Oden did all this research showing this wasn't some new invention from the 1500s.
No, not at all. Oden showed it was an ancient doctrine, something the early church fathers understood perfectly. The problem was, over that long stretch of the Middle Ages, the emphasis shifted to earning your salvation.
Yeah.
The idea of like buying time out of purgatory or earning status through works.
Yeah.
It all just slowly buried that original radical concept of free grace.
So it's just obscured. It was buried under centuries of religious effort.
Exactly.
And when you pull that doctrine back out into the light, it immediately separates the gospel from, well, pretty much everything else the world offers.
It really does. I mean, if you analyze any other major religion or, frankly, any moral philosophy or self-help book, they all operate on the same principle. It's basically live as you ought, follow the rules, and then God, or the universe, or whatever you want to call it, will accept you and bless you.
Works first, then the blessing. It's a transaction.
It's an economic exchange. But the material says the gospel just flips that entire order on its head.
It challenges our most basic understanding of reward and effort.
Precisely. The gospel says, receive God's total acceptance and blessing as a free, unearned gift through Jesus Christ.
Okay, blessing first.
Blessing first.
Yeah.
And then, and only then, will you have the capacity and the desire to live as you ought. You aren't justified by your works. You are justified for works.
And if we dig into that word justification itself, it's so much bigger than just forgiveness, isn't it? Most people hear it and think, okay, my debt is forgiven.
Right, which is huge. But the source clarifies that forgiveness is only half the story. And it's technically a negative concept.
Negative in what sense?
Negative in the best sense.
Yeah.
It means your legal liability is gone. You're no longer condemned. But justification is a positive change of status.
The material uses a legal metaphor for this.
It does, and it's a great one. Forgiveness says, you may go. Your sentence is revoked.
Which is incredible news.
It's amazing. But justification goes so much further. It says, you may come. You're welcome to all my love, my presence, my inheritance. It's not just acquittal. It's adoption.
And that gets us to the heart of the doctrine, what they call the great exchange. Our sins were put on Christ, which secures the pardon. But then there's that positive side.
This is the part that's so transformative.
Yeah.
It's the idea of imputed righteousness. It's not just that our sins are taken away, but that Christ's perfect righteousness, his perfect life, is put onto us.
There's a verse for this.
Yeah, the source highlights 2 Corinthians 5:21. God made him sin who knew no sin, that we might become the righteousness of God in him.
So Jesus was treated as if he lived our life. So we could be treated as if we had lived his.
That's it. It's a mind-bending concept.
It is abstract, and to make it stick, the source brings in that that military analogy from the show NCIS.
Oh, right. The scene with the older, broken-down World War II GI. He's being accused of something, he looks rough, and the military police are ready to just haul him away.
He's a picture of a broken life.
Totally. And then his friend rips open his shirt.
And there's the flash of the Congressional Medal of Honor earned at Iwo Jima.
And in that moment, the entire scene changes. The MPs who were ready to accuse him, they immediately snap to attention. They salute.
But they're not saluting the man himself.
No, not at all. They're not saluting the broken-down little thing they were just about to condemn. They are saluting the medal that covers him, the honor that's been put on him.
And the insight is that justification means we're covered with Christ's medals. So even though in ourselves we feel like that broken down GI,
right,
everything in the universe has to, in a way, salute you because of the righteousness that covers you. It changes your objective standing.
And that status change gives us the ultimate security. The 17th century writer Richard Hooker, he summed it up in a way that is just, it's almost unbelievable. He said, "We are in the sight of God the Father as is the very Son of God himself."
To be viewed with the same favor as Christ, that's profound.
It's everything.
So if we accept that this incredible, undeserved status is ours, well, the natural question is, if it's all free, why should I do anything? Which brings us right to the second half of this deep dive.
How this free gift leads inevitably to the hard work of justice. The answer is that a heart that is poured out in mercy and justice, that is the inevitable sign of being saved by grace.
Not an optional add-on?
Not at all. It's the necessary proof. If the heart hasn't changed, the faith isn't real.
Okay, let's start in the Old Testament. The sources focus a lot on the prophets. Jeremiah, Isaiah, Amos.
They do. They were constantly hammering away at this, and they had a specific litmus test for the community.
The Quartet of the Vulnerable.
The Quartet of the Vulnerable. They insisted that if you lacked intense concern for the widow, the orphan, the immigrant or alien, and the poor, it was proof your heart was far from God.
And why those four groups?
Because in that ancient society, those were the four groups that had no inherent power, no legal defense, no financial defense. They were totally susceptible to being exploited.
So how the powerful treated them was the real test of the society.
Exactly. If you treated them fairly, it meant justice was real. If you neglected them, it meant justice was only for the strong.
And this really comes to a head in Isaiah 58, which is a passage that just confronts spiritual ritual head-on.
Well, it's a key piece of evidence. The people are fasting, right? This is the ultimate sign of repentance, of humbling themselves. But Isaiah calls them out.
He says their fasting is worthless.
Worthless. Because at the same time, they're oppressing their workers and they're failing to loose the chains of injustice.
So there's this total disconnect between their personal piety and their social responsibility.
That's it. They think they're humbling themselves before God, but their lack of care for the poor shows they don't get it. They don't truly grasp their own desperate need for grace.
If you understood how much mercy you needed, you'd show mercy to others.
You'd have to. And this is explicitly tied back to grace in Deuteronomy 10. God tells Israel not to abuse immigrants. And the reason he gives...
It's very specific.
It's so specific. He says, do not abuse them because you yourselves were foreigners in Egypt and I brought you out. In other words, you know what it's like to be powerless and I rescued you by sheer grace. Now you do the same.
Grace received demands justice given.
Yes. And Jesus continues this exact framework in the New Testament when he confronts the Pharisees.
He uses the same prophetic analysis. They're masters of public prayer, religious display.
But they devour widows' houses. They follow all the rules, but they neglect justice and the love of God. The spiritual display is a sham if the social outcome is exploitation.
Okay, this brings us to that famous sticking point for a lot of people. The apparent fight between Paul, who says justification by faith, and James, who seems to say you need works.
Right. James 2 asks, can that faith save him?
And he gives the example of seeing someone who's hungry and cold and is saying, be well, without actually helping them.
This is a crucial distinction. James is not saying Paul is wrong. He's clarifying the kind of faith Paul is talking about.
Yeah.
The simple way to put it is this. You are saved by faith alone, but not by a faith which stays alone. So he's testing the quality of the faith. He's testing its reality. He's saying, if you claim to have this life-changing faith, but there is no observable outcome, and notice, he immediately points to neglecting the poor as the key evidence, then that faith is dead.
It's just an idea in your head.
It's an intellectual concept, not a heart-transforming reality. The tree of justification must bear the fruit of justice. If it doesn't, it was never a real tree to begin with.
Okay, so that's the what. Now let's get to the why. Why does this doctrine of justification mechanically change a person's attitude toward justice? The sources give us 3 radical shifts.
The first one is a paradox. It gives you a higher view of God's justice, but it removes your pride.
How does that work?
Well, if you believe you can earn your way to God, you inherently have a kind of low view of God's holy standard. You think, I'm a pretty good person, so the bar can't be that high.
But justification by faith says the price for your acceptance was the death of God's Son.
Right. And that single fact just pushes the standard of God's holiness and justice way, way up. The sheer cost of your salvation proves that God intensely hates injustice and won't just overlook it.
But then where does the balance come in?
The balance is knowing that you were a perpetrator of the ultimate injustice rebellion against God, and yet you were saved by grace. That destroys any self-righteousness.
So you can't be condescending.
You can't. You can pursue justice with intensity, but you can never approach it with pride because you know you're a recipient of the same mercy you're fighting for.
Okay, what's the second reason?
Reason 2. It changes your attitude toward the poor by eliminating condescension. This goes back to Jesus saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit."
Which means acknowledging your spiritual bankruptcy.
Total bankruptcy. You recognize you were saved only by God's free, unconditional generosity. You brought nothing to the table. So when you look at a materially poor person, you should see a mirror.
Because without that spiritual charity, you'd be destitute.
Exactly. And that realization should completely eliminate the tendency to say, well, why don't you just pull yourself up by your bootstraps?
The source has a pretty severe warning here.
It does. If you're a person who believes you earned your standing with God through your hard work or your morality or your success, the source calls you middle class in spirit.
Meaning you're operating on a meritocracy model. I earned it, they should too.
And that spiritual status leads directly to judgment and condescension toward the materially poor. You see them as failures because you see yourself as a success. And the source is warned that this prideful mindset, it means that person is actually spiritually lost.
Wow. Okay, and the third reason?
Reason 3, it changes the attitude of the poor by restoring dignity. This tackles the deep psychological damage of the modern world.
The iron law of achievement.
Right. Our whole society runs on this idea that your value is tied to your productivity, your bank account, your credentials. And that leaves people who feel like failures, often for reasons outside their control, feeling utterly worthless.
And the gospel confronts that directly.
It does. The material points to that amazing paradox in James 1. James tells the poor Christian to take pride in their high position. They're an adopted child of the King, loved unconditionally.
And the rich Christian.
The rich Christian should dwell on their low position, that they're a vile sinner saved only by mercy. It just completely flips the script on societal power.
It's transformative.
Absolutely. The theologian Miroslav Volf saw this at work in inner-city Baltimore. For someone who feels like a failure, the gospel tells them they are loved infinitely and unconditionally, regardless of what they have or haven't achieved. That acceptance contains enormous untapped resources for healing and dignity.
So there's the reconciliation. Justification, which is the source of our deepest comfort, inevitably leads to the urgent work of justice.
And as you said earlier, it's a powerful evangelistic engine. When the world sees people pouring themselves out for the marginalized without any expectation of return, they get interested. They ask, what changed you? Why do you care so much?
And that question leads them right back to the doctrine of justification by faith. It completes the circle.
It does.
Let's leave you with one final provocative insight from the material. It's an anecdote designed to really test the heart. It's a story about a very wealthy, unmarried aunt.
Right, and she had a nephew who she suspected was only being kind to her because he wanted to inherit her fortune.
So she decides to test him. One morning, she dresses up in tattered, filthy clothes, makes herself look genuinely homeless, and she lays down on the steps of his elegant townhouse.
And when the nephew comes out, he doesn't show any compassion. He just curses at her, calls her a bum, and threatens to call the police.
Yeah.
His response just revealed his true heart.
That his kindness was all conditional.
It was completely self-serving. And this test echoes the biblical standard. The source cites Proverbs 14.31. He who oppresses the poor shows contempt for their maker. The suggestion here is profound.
That God places the vulnerable in our path as a kind of test.
Yes. The ultimate giver of grace, the source implies, is saying, I am the poor person on your step. I am the immigrant in your city. Your genuine, uncalculated attitude toward the vulnerable reveals your true attitude toward the unseen God who gave you everything for free.
So the question to consider is this. In what unexpected, vulnerable places might your actions be revealing your true, deep-seated relationship with the ultimate king and judge?